My sister lives in Delhi, डिफेंस कॉलोनी. मेरे माँ बाप भी दिल्ली में ही थे. मैं नहीं कभी रहा वहाँ पर बिकॉज जब वो दिल्ली को मूव किए तो मैं तो अमेरिका आ गया था उसके बाद, तो मैं कभी रहा नहीं वहाँ पर. So all set?
You think so?
We will just wait for another minute or so, a couple of minutes. I'm still off center. So Chandra, this is the camera that you put here?
Right. I just wanted to try.
I think that should, unless I,
Exactly.
you know, if I get too exuberant on something.
Pretty invisible.
It's at the edge, you know, a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Nobody else come, nobody else. What can we do? We'll just have to, they'll have to just miss the first part. Okay, shall we start? Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namah Shri Shankarananda Guru Padambu Janmane Savilasa Mahamoha Graha Grasaika Karmane. What adjustments do you need to make? That's good. So let's chant. Verses number 36, 37, and 38. So, verse number 36. Karane sattvamanandamayaha sattvamanandamayaha modadivrittibhihi tattat koshaistutadatmyat atma tattanmano bhavet. Yeah, sorry. Atma tattanmayo bhavet. Atma tattanmayo bhavet. Anvayavyatirekaabhyam. Number 37. Anvayavyatirekaabhyam Panchakosha vivekataha Swatmanam tata uddhritya Param Brahma prapadyate. Abhane sthula dehasya Swapne yada bhanamatmanaha Sonvayo vyatirekastat navabhasanam. Bhane nya navabhasanam. Okay. So if you look at the sequence, oops, I forgot to turn this down. So if you look at the sequence of the verses that we are tackling, in terms of the context, what it said was that we should think about the fact that our life is the circle of lives. Circle of life means the taking a birth, going through all of the experiences of life, and then disappearing from that scene, and then reappearing it in some other form, should be seen to be like a whirlpool, which you cannot get out of. The reason you cannot get out of it is that the laws of the universe are that if you have some desires, and all of us, we do, we have, even at the end of the life, we have desires. Those change in nature, but they are still there. So in the beginning, your desires are, may I get married to a good person. Then towards the latter half, you say, may my neighbor has children who are very my neighbor is very fortunate because he has very good children. I hope I have, this time my children are not that good, but next time I hope I have better children. Like that, it just goes on and on. Desires are there. Here's a funny story that Swami Maheshananji gives, talk about marriage. So he said there was a Greek philosopher. Apparently it's a true story. And so he was a well-known philosopher, and he had a lot of students, shishyas. And he was perhaps a kind of like a sadhu who has himself not married or something. He was just just a philosopher, a single philosopher. So a lot of students used to come to him, and they would say, "Sir, should I get married or not?" Which happens in all of our brahmacharis also. So he says yes to everybody. He says, you must get married. And his reasoning was this is the interesting part. He says, if you get a good wife, so he's talking from a male standpoint, if you get a good wife, you have a very happy life. If you don't get a good life, this will be a door towards inquiring toward God. And that also will be very good. So if you have an unhappy marriage, then you should see that as a blessing, because you will now start to seek God. So either way, get married. Either you'll have a happy life and then you can think about seeking God in the next life, or if you have an unhappy life, you can do that right now. I was telling you that I had an uncle, my oldest mama, who had a terrible wife. She was just a terror, literally a terror in the whole family. And the interesting thing was that he was so saintly. And this saying about this Greek philosopher is absolutely true. Because, in those days, and even now to a large extent, divorce was not a consideration. It's not as though, I got a terrible wife, now let me go find a new one. That wasn't the case. By the time her terrible nature became apparent, they had children, and they were all in a joint family. So there's no point in just. So he just put up with it, and in putting it up with it, his nature became very pleasant. He didn't fight or anything. He tried to probably fight in the beginning. Don't do this, don't do that, and so on. But she was such a terror, she wouldn't listen to him. So what is he supposed to do? He says, forget it. I'm just going to write her off. And then he became a very saintly person. This is really my own experience. So the advice of the Greek philosopher was a good one. Anyway, going back to the going around in a whirlpool. You can see why that is the case, because we even end our life with desires, even though we know our end is coming. So you'd think that I'm just not going to have any desires or anything. No. Desire for a better health, desire for a better family, are they there? So now here's the situation. The law of the creation is that no desires are left unfulfilled. No desires. But then you can say that's not true, because there are desires that are left unfulfilled. It just means it takes more time. Therefore, if you give up this life when your desires have not had a chance to be fulfilled, guess what? They are kept in your account. Ishvara doesn't forget it. Ishvara wants to make sure that anybody's desire, whatever the good desire or bad desire, doesn't matter. That's up to you. Ishvara doesn't say that. That's your own karma. But whatever the desires are, they will be fulfilled. So the karma phala has to be postponed to the next life. This is why we take a birth. Really, this is a fact. And so the only way, in fact, this is a very important topic, we'll go over that not now, later on, because in Vedanta it says that you cannot willingly give up desires. That doesn't happen. How can anybody just give up desires? Because this is our part of our life and so on. I don't know what else to do. So the only way to get rid of desires are to shift your attention from worldly desires to God Prapti. That's it. So desires will be there, but instead of useless desires, they become useful desires. This is a serious topic. There's a lot of discussion on this, and really this is the one thing that we should see is that we cannot just will, because desires means there is something that is bugging you. You're not happy with the way things are. So, which is natural, because you are not completely happy. So you fulfill it with some eating ice cream or something, some trivial things. And so this will continue. This will continue. So the only way to really be free of it is to seek Ishvara. Brahma Prapti. In fact, this is what it is. In fact, if you look at number 37, second line of number 37, Swatmanam tata udhritya param brahma prapadyate. Brahma means Ishvara. So that is the only way to get out of this whirlpool. So this is the context that we have been on this track of this context. So there, if I can remind you, is the way to get out of the whirlpool, just like a kind person took kindness on this bug and lifted it from the whirlpool into, so he's no longer drowning, is, what was it he said? It is from Panchakosha Vivekena. This was verse number 32. Upadesham avapya evam acharya tattvadarshinaha Panchakosha Vivekena labhante nirvrittim param. So nirvrittim param labhate and Brahma Prapti is the same thing. It means that you end this cycle of relative dukkha, relative sukha, and so on and so forth. So Panchakosha Vivekena. So that's what we were studying. So now we have already seen what the Panchakosha Vivekas are. And so this is also an important thing to see. So what it means is this. The Panchakoshas means there are 5 ways where you fail to see yourself. Because of 5 identifications, you don't see yourself as being separated from it. If we can go back to the example of this choir, where your child is involved in a choir, I can change that example to say that there are 5 different choirs. One is an all-girls choir. One is a boys' choir in which she's the only one. Something like that. You can say that. But in none of the cases, the parents of this girl are able to see her voice as separate from the others. It is always mixed in with something else. And so being mixed in with some other voices means it hides the purity of her voice. So this is an important thing to see. It's not as though you don't hear your daughter's voice, but you don't see it clearly enough because it is mixed with other voices. So also for the Panchakosha. So what happens in the Panchakosha is that when you say, I am an Indian, my body is Indian. This is an Annamaya Kosha. This is how you see it. So essentially in Sanskritam this word is called Tadatmyam. Tasya Atmanam iti tas Tadatmyam means a identification. Your identity and what you are identified with are mixed up together. So when you say I am, even if you say I am a man or I am a woman, that by itself involves a body. And then on top of that, if you say I'm an Indian man, then you have an Indian body that you're identified with. And so this can be done. This is one of the identifications. Then another thing is, I am alive. I am living. I am living and kicking. Alive and kicking. So this is what is called Pranamaya Kosha. Pranamaya Kosha. So another hiding. Then you can say that I am thinking. I was thinking that, we're going to do this, that or the other. This is Manomaya Kosha. Then you say, I did this. Because in thinking you are not sure. Say, I think I was thinking. You're not sure. But when you say, I did this, this is a definiteness. This is called Vijnanamaya Kosha. you know for sure, but you are identified with as a karta, as a doer. Or finally, you can say, I was very happy. I was very happy once I found something, something like the other. I became so happy. So this is Anandamaya Kosha. And so there was a question from one of the students last time also, that how can you say that I am happy is an identification, because isn't that your own truth? No, in this context, no, because in fact it is given in this verse number 36. So, Karane, we've already done this. Karane Sattvam Anandamaya Modadi Vrittibhi. Modadi Vrittibhi. So, means that there is in fact a modification of Ananda. It is not pure Ananda. Why isn't it pure Ananda? Why can we say it's a modification? Because two reasons. One is that when you say, I am happy, there are various shades of being happy. Like, for example, you can say, there was one, it was just happened to me. I'll give you the example. There was some kind of, so for 2 months I didn't pay it. So they cut me off. And I've been paying it for the last 10-15 years. So they cut me off. So I had to go through writing another letter saying, I'm very sorry, it's my fault, please forgive me, this, that, or the other. And today I got the letter saying, okay, we have reinstated you. So when I opened the mail, I was very relieved. So the relief is one kind of happiness. Or if the Warriors win tonight, which they may not because they are behind 53-46 at the half, that would be an exciting, that would be wonderful. If you are a Warriors fan, if you are from Houston, then no. It's really a funny situation, honestly. This is exactly the same interesting thing. Look at this. One team loses and one team wins. And the referees and so on and so forth, they don't care. They get paid. But one set of fans are happy, the other set of fans are unhappy. Why? Because of identification. All because of this is the power of identification. And it takes a while, you say, warriors, 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 warriors. In the beginning, you didn't think about it. And in fact, you got hooked to them once they start winning. Because everybody wants to be in the winning team. So anyway, happiness has different forms. One is relief, one is excitement. There are a lot of different ones. So this is one of the reasons why this Anandamaya Kosha is not you. The second reason is that whenever you are happy, you find a reason for it. It's called causal happiness. We don't usually ask anyone. Actually, this is a bad form to say, why are you so happy? This is not a good thing to do. If somebody is unhappy, you can say, why are you unhappy? But if somebody is happy, you don't ask, why are you? But if somebody is really jumping up and down, you say, hey, what's happened? They'll say, oh, I got this letter, just like I got this letter. I'm very happy. Because of that. This is called Modadi Vrittihi. Whereas the Ananda of the Atma has none of these two limitations. What are the two limitations? One is, it is a vritti, means that there are shades of differences. The second one is, it is causeless. It's not as though you are because of something that you're happy, it is your nature which is happy. So therefore, the Anandamaya Kosha also is a kosha. That's the final judgment is. It's a kosha. You always identify with something. So this is the koshas. So now let us break new ground and go over verse number 37. So we finished up to 36. Now let's go to 37. Anvaya vyatirekabhyam panchakosha vivekatah swatmanam tatah uddhritya param brahma prapadyate. This is the verse. So if you just look at the word meanings, so the important words are anvaya vyatireka. It's a technical word, technical sense. We should know exactly what that means and how it applies to us. We will also make that clear, but first we should see what it means, and I'll explain that a little bit later on. So let me just go on to say, because of anvaya vyatireka, because of that, by the help of that, with the help of the anvaya vyatireka, I do a viveka of the panchakosha. And because of my doing viveka of the panchakosha with the help of anvaya vyatireka. So the methodology is anvaya vyatireka, which I'll explain in a minute. And the process is to do viveka. And if you do that, swatmanam tataha uddhritya, you lift up. What does it say in uddhritya? So uddhritya, I'll explain in a minute. Uddhritya means to lift up the swatmanam, and by doing that, param brahma prapadyate, you become free. You are lifted out of, just like a wise person lifts a insect from a whirlpool. Here the viveka lifts you up from the cycle of birth and death. Viveka lifts you up from the cycle of birth and death. So now let's look at what is anvaya and vyatireka. Regardless of that, what we need to do in our lives is to become skilled in doing viveka. This is what has to be done. Viveka and vichara. And we will do that next week also in this single class that is from from Adi Shankara's Aparoksha Anubhuti. But similar to that also, here also, viveka is what we ultimately has to do. By listening to classes, by thinking on all of that, ultimately what we have to do is to do our own personal viveka. Personal viveka means it's the same viveka, but we have to personalize it. I have to see that for myself. This is the way out of the cycle. And it is done through anvaya vyatireka. Okay, before I go to anvaya vyatireka, let me explain the word uddhritya. Uddhritya means uddharanam kritya. Means you lift up the Atma. Not literally lift up the Atma, but you lift up from the cycle of samsara. So uddharanam, ut means up. And so in Gita also, for example, it in the 15th chapter, it says urdhva mula madhashakam. So the urdhva mula means that where the roots are above. So it is lifted up in that sense. And also another thing, just to give you an idea, in Chandogya Upanishad, Brahman has the name Ut. So another meaning of this, of say Brahma Prapadyate, could be Ut Dharanam Kritya, having attained Brahman. There are two meanings. Then the third meaning is the same one that the English translator has given, which is having separated it, distinguished it. So it's distinguished it means, for example, the one we said that your daughter's voice was always mixed in with someone else. But if you were to ask her to just sing by herself without anyone, and you have a pure voice of your daughter, that would be called Udhritya. Why? Because you have separated it from the others. Anyway, so that's the meaning of the word Udhritya. Now let us look at the important pair of words, Anvaya Vyatireka. So Anvaya means the one in English, the translation will be, really that's a good translation, the one which inheres, I-N-H-E-R-E-S, inheres, from which the word inherent comes. It is inherent. Like, for example, in a cookie, what is inherent in the cookie is sugar. It may have nuts, it may have, unless it's a salty cookie, but any sweet cookie has the sugar inheres. Other things may or may not be there. Nuts may not be there, other, coconut may not be there, but the sugar is the one that makes it into a cookie. So this is the meaning of Anvaya. Anvaya means the one that stays. And in fact, ultimately, the word Anvaya means, so the Anvaya can be relative or absolute. On a relative sense, you can give an example that it, so for example, this is an interesting example. In our classes, I am the Anvaya. In my classes. You go to some other classes, I'm not there. And this is why I was telling Chandra that, you guys, sometimes Chawla is here and she's recording. Sometimes and she's not there, and sometimes Chandra is here recording. Sometimes Raj is there. So sometimes they're there, sometimes. So this is called Vyatireka, by the way. When something is there some of the time and not there, it is called Vyatireka. So I was telling Chandra that why don't you let me take the recorder at home. So the problem with this is that if I'm late, then the class also has to wait for me to do that. But otherwise, I'm always there in my classes. This is an example of Anvaya. This is Anvaya means the one which does not disappears in a relative sense. And the one that comes and goes is called Vyatireka. So the Vyatireka means that it is not constant, but the Anvaya is constant. So this is there in a relative sense also. Actually, in an absolute sense, the meaning of Anvaya is Sat. And the meaning of Sat is that which never gives up its Swarupa ever under any condition is called Sat. Whereas Mithya or Asat means sometimes it is there, sometimes it is not there. So now if you look at this, so now we understand that the viveka that we need to do is with the help of this principle of distinguishing between anvaya and vyatireka. So for instance, your experiences in your swapnavastha, in your dream state, are not repeated in your jagrat avastha, your waking state. And the waking state examples are not repeated, they completely disappear. You may have, it's interesting, supposing you're taking a fast, you're keeping a fast, and you are very hungry. All day long you say, when is this, oh gosh, it's already only 4 o'clock, we still have so many hours to go, oh my goodness, I'm so hungry. And so this, that or the other, but somehow, and then like this Ramadan that is going on for the Muslims, you can see this, that they then at the end of the day, they have a good meal. Like in our Karwa Chauth. So the woman also has a nice meal at the end of the day, but she's hungry the whole day. So the whole day she's hungry. And then she has a good meal, and now she has her tummy is full. Then she goes to sleep. It is very likely that her dreams are going to be about hunger. And she will dream, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry. Why do I have to keep this fast? This is for this wretched husband of mine who doesn't love me as much as I love him, and I'm the one who, I don't know, something like that you can imagine in the dream. Your tummy is full, but you feel hungry in the dream. Or the other example is the other way around, that you found some money and somebody just gave you some money, and you put it in a little box in the dream, and this is your favorite box in the corner, and next morning you look for the box to see if there's any money there. There's no money there because it was a dream money. So what it means is that as far as the dream and the waking states are concerned, they are vyatireka. They cancel each other out. This is an important thing to see. They cancel each other out. Now what about an anvaya? For you there is no vyatireka. Why not? Because you are the dreamer and you are the waker. So just like in my classes, I am the anvaya. Whether some student comes in or not, sometimes you come, sometimes you don't. I have to look around to see who's there today. Some people are not there, some people are there. But I am always the anvaya in my classes. So similarly, the I in the dream and the waking state inheres, is inherent. I'm kind of like the sugar. So there is two different cookies, dream cookie and the waking cookie. But I am the sugar which is inherent in both the cookies. And what are the chances that I should be considered from the standpoint of one or the other experiences? In other words, let me restate that. If you have to find yourself, isn't it more reasonable that you go for anvaya rather than avyatireka? Because if something is changing, you don't know what its real form is. And we are looking for reality, stability. So we cannot really be looking at the Vyatireka. We have to look at Anvaya. I don't know if it was this class or some other class. I may have given you this example. Swami Maheswaranji gave this beautiful example. He says that when he talks to his students about, dream state and waking state. So there's a question by one of the people. He says, Swamiji, why do you always talk about the dream state? Because I have nothing to do with it. That doesn't really concern me. I am struggling with the waking state. That's what you should confine your talks to me about. Don't waste time, because I'll start looking at my cell phone when you start talking about dream state and so on and so forth. So was it there? Was it I talking about? Yeah. This is an important thing to see, a very important thing. So Swamiji's answer was that because your identification is with the waking person. So you are viewing the whole thing from the standpoint of the waking person. This is a problem. This is not truth. You feel, I think I gave you this example about the Trump support and all of that. It was from this example. You are steadfast into just believing that the waking state is the ultimate experience. The other ones don't count because they come and go. This is an impediment in your understanding. Your identification should be with yourself, with the Anvaya, not with the Vyatireka. Important point. So we have to really do this. We have to get into this Viveka. And it has to be done in a binary fashion. If A is there, B is there. If A is not there and B is there, that means B is more real than A. This is what we have to do. And unless we do that, we are not going, we are always in this circle. This is the issue that comes up. And so, it is really all a matter of identification, tadatmyam. Our whole life is nothing but the problems of identification and the freedom from it. And so there's so much to be said on this side here, but just some examples of identification. So, for example, one thing is, supposing you came into this country and you had let's say a 5-year-old kid who came with you, and from India, 5 or 6, around there in that time frame. So, if somebody asks at the school, who are you? That kid will say, I'm Indian. I'm Indian. Now the person, the 6-year-old, has gone to high school, college, and he's even forgotten his native language. It was all in English. The mother and father do not speak Hindi at home, and never, not to him anyway. So everything is in English, and so on and so forth. And he's now 44 years of age. Chances are that he will say, I'm American. I'm no longer Indian. So the same person can take himself to be an Indian And the same person can take himself to be an American. And it's all a question of identification. And Swamiji gave this very beautiful example, which I think I told you last time. He says, just a few generations ago, even in the 20th century, 1900s, even now to a large extent, if you are a Brahmana, you were considered you will not touch an untouchable person, because you will think that I will get dispurified and nothing to do with them. So your identification with being a Brahmana is very pure. You will associate with other Brahmanas and so on and so forth. Nowadays, when you go to the office to work, you don't know who is a Brahmana, who is a Kshatriya, who is a Shudra, who is a Vaishya, nothing at all. Everybody is nothing but workers, and you don't even have any identification, no nothing. Your identification is, I'm a human being. Somebody else is also a human being. Same thing happens when in India you hate Pakistanis. He says, these are the people who created problems for us. Here, if you meet, Pakistanis in a social setting and so on, the identification is not there. They are just, he has a Muslim name, you are taking Ramzan, but it doesn't make any difference. So the whole thing is about identification. And right now, my identification is with a waking person. And the waking person identification brings in the Panchakoshas along with it. I'm a man, I'm an Indian man, I'm happy, I'm unhappy. And this whole thing is, and this I'm not willing to put on the table to argue. Leave that aside. Now tell me how I can be free. So the Vedanta says the only way you can be free if you identify with Atma, not the waking person. And that Atma identification has to involve Panchakosha Viveka. Anvayavati Reka Bhyam Panchavukosha Vivekataha Swatmanam Tata Uddhritya Param Brahma Prapadyate. Okay, so this is the method. So let's go on to look at some interesting commentary on this, interesting ideas about this and so on. Several things. So one is that the identification with Atma means what? It means the identification with my own Swarupa, not with my entourage that I'm surrounding myself with, which is in the form of koshas. And what is the Swarupa? So let's look at that. One of them is the ultimate Anvaya, the absolute Anvaya. What do you mean by absolute Anvaya? Means the one which is always there,
which inheres, which is inherent in everything. So in other words, I'm really looking for the one ingredient which never changes. That's what I want to identify with. In fact, that's what I want to be. I want to be the very form of Brahman, which is Sat, Chit and Ananda. So let's look at each one of them. So one of them is Sat. As I said earlier, Sat is the ultimate absolute Anvaya, not relative Anvaya. See, interestingly enough, just look at this. The Anvaya of the person in dream state and in the waking state so far is not the Atma but me. It is the Ahankara. So therefore, this we will take up in more detail later on. All I'm saying is that so far the Anvaya is a relative Anvaya. It is not absolute Anvaya. Because me also is an identification, as we will see in more clarity later on. So, but for now, this is the case. But for the absolute Anvaya, my identification should be, and it actually is already, but I don't realize it is with Sat Chit Ananda. And there, Sat means the absolute Anvaya. What does it mean? So just look at this. I am is never negated. Never. Under no circumstances it is negated. You can never say, I am not there. Now, you can say, I will not be there. You can think that. While you are here, you will never say, I am not there. So that part is pakka, is firm. But you could visualize that I will not be there. In that visualization, I will not be there means my body will not be there. Because you don't even know yourself to say whether how long you will be. It's not yours yet. But the body is visible, and that you can say with certainty that it won't be there. Yeah. And because you're mixing up the body with yourself, you also extend it to say, I will not be there. That's all, which is not true. The I, concept of I that you are mixing up doesn't belong to you. It's not yours yet. It's kind of like, you take somebody's, you ask somebody, he says, do you have $5? And he says, yes. You take the $5 and give it to a beggar without asking the other person. That $5 doesn't belong to you. If I give a $5 which belongs to me, then it is fine. But you cannot take somebody else's $5 and give it to the beggar. Because you actually have no intention of repaying that person. So similarly, when you say, I will not be there, the I doesn't belong to you yet. Only when you're clear about I, then you can say with certainty, yes, I will not be there. And you can never say it. Once you understand I, that you'll never be able to say it. But at least in this life, you say, I am. So just think about it. You may not be young, but you always are. I am. I am. So this is called Sat. I am. It never, this is the ultimate Anvaya. You know, they say that we really have all these desires that swirl around me can be distilled into 3 basic desires. And each one corresponds to Satchit Ananda. And in each one of them I make a mistake. One of my desires is that may I never cease to be. Nobody wants to disappear. And yet, I believe I will disappear. So you make a mistake about it. So in all 3 of these fundamental desires, I make a basic mistake and I run around in circles from life to life. One of them is that I want to live forever. I want to be forever. The second one is that I want to be, but I want to be aware that I am. Like, the Egyptian mummy, where the kings were, after they were dead, they were given all these medicines around the embalmment, and the hope was that and only the richest of the kings and queens could do this. It requires a lot of embalmment, which is very expensive, but the hope was that somehow I will cheat death. And I don't know what their thinking was, they'll come back or what happens, I have no idea. But the whole idea was that I want to be, but not like a mummy. Or supposing you say, okay, we will, and this happens all the time, this is a very interesting thing, where someone is very ill and you put that person in a coma. One person I know, her mother was kept, there were three daughters, and all 3 daughters agreed to have their mother in a coma for 2 years. Very expensive. And all throughout the 2 years, the mother never really regained, and she died. So, if you were to ask anyone that, okay, fine, we will extend your life by 2 years, but you will be in a coma and you will not come back. Do you want it? They'll say no. What good is it that if I am extending my life by 2 years, but I'm not aware of it? So the second desire that we have is that not only will I live forever, but I want to be aware of it. I am. And in fact, you cannot be you are unless you are aware of it. I am. So this second desire. And the interesting thing is that it's just like in the case of Sat. That desire also you make a mistake on. Because you feel that once I am dead, then my awareness also will go. That's another mistake. So, second desire. The third one is, not only should I live forever, not only should I be aware, but I should be happy. And this is why when a person is very ill, that person says, you know what, I want to die because I don't want to be associated with the problems of being very ill. So there also you distinguish the Atma from the Dukkha, from the body Dukkha and the mind, and sometimes people commit suicide because they are mentally disappointed. You know, they were in love with this woman and she ran away with somebody else. And Swami Mahesharanji gives this example. He says there was a guy who decided to commit suicide from Qutub Minar. The Qutub Minar, just like the Golden Gate Bridge, used to be a favorite of people. I think now they have, you know, they prevent people from doing it, but they used to be the famous thing that people. So these two guys, they went there, and this person says, you know what, she has ditched me, she won't marry me, and my life is terrible, and I'm just going to commit suicide. So the other person says, no, you're okay, your mother loves you. He says, I don't care about my mother and father, I want her to love me, and she doesn't love me. Somehow this other guy was desperately trying to get hold of this girl, and this must be the age of cell phones, because not before cell phone, but now she got hold of her through the cell phone. And this guy he's climbing. He's almost on the last one. And finally she says, okay, I'll marry him. So he's saying, hey, she says she'll marry you, don't jump, it's okay. He says, are you sure? He says, yes. So he came down. He came down from it. He says, give it to me. And she says, yes, I'll marry. He says, oh, wonderful, I'm so happy, you are almost dead. So happiness, we want to live forever, we want to be aware, and we want to be happy. And it turns out that all three of them are fulfilled by the Brahman, that I am. The only one which I am not sure of is the Ananda. And that comes with a little bit more thought. And there also the lakshana for the thought is, and this is an interesting thing to see, I am never the subject of displeasure. I'm never the object of displeasure. An important thing to see this. Means that even if I say I don't like myself, if I say I don't like myself, it is not because of you that you don't like yourself, it is due to some upadhi that you don't like yourself. You're going to ask somebody, why is it that you don't like yourself? He says, well, you know what, I'm not well read, people make fun of me, or my health is bad, something or the other. And in fact, people who commit suicide, this is a very important thing to see, people who commit suicide also cannot stand being in that state, because I don't want to be in that state. I don't know what else to do. So anyway, going back to the identification. So the identification is always with no identification, but an inquiry into the ultimate anvaya leaves me with the sense of freedom. And this has to be done individually. That whatever things I am identified with comes and goes, whereas I don't come and go. I'm always the same. And one interesting word to note here on the verse number 37 is the last one, prapadyate. Prapadyate. So prapadyate means prakarshena padyate. Prakarshena padyate means one that reaches, one that is obtained, one becomes one. Prapadyate means very, very well. Prakarshena means extremely well. So here, just hear this commentary. I've talked about this many times. So praptihi and padyate is the same word, the same dhatu, pad. So praptihi means an acquisition. So the acquisition is of one of two kinds, as you know by now, I'm pretty sure. One is called praptasya prapti, the acquisition of the already acquired, and the other one is apraptasya prapti, the not yet acquired. Right? So these are the two kinds. So here Swami Maheshananji says, very beautiful example, prapadyate means praptasya prapti. How? What do you mean by why is it praptasya prapti? The one which is already there? Because here the example of your daughter's voice should be brought up. It's not as though she was not singing, but her singing was mixed up with other things. When the other things are dropped off, it's kind of, one thing you can do. So, for example, this is an interesting example that one can take. Supposing she has 5 friends, and they all sing some songs together, same song, very nicely, and they're so this what is it called? These the Barber's Quartet. Have you ever seen I think those things are not there anymore. In the earlier days, you would have these 4 barbers that would sing so much in sync that their voices were indistinguishable from each other. So nicely to hear that. They used to be there all over in television and so on and so forth. Maybe it's still there, I don't know. So, supposing your daughter is singing with 3 or 4 other friends and their voices are all in sync, then you can request them, please, friend number 1, be quiet. Now there's only 3 left. Friend number 2 is quiet, there's only 2 left. Friend number 3 also becomes quiet. Now your daughter alone is singing. So what does it mean? Is it apraptasya praptihi or praptasya praptihi? Praptasya praptihi. It is, she was always there, but hidden from you. Atma is like that. You do not gain Atma which is not there. And in fact, all that you do is reduce the limiting adjuncts, the limiting issues, what's called upadhis. And the Atma is always there, just is left alone. It has to be that way. You know why it has to be that way? Just think about it from a mathematical standpoint also. Atma is supposed to be infinite, and it is infinite. And that's how the word Brahma comes in. Briha. Briha means large, means infinitely large. There's no way, Satchidananda, there's no way that it is never not there. But it can be hidden, that's possible. It may be mistaken, but it's always there. So you and I have always been there. It's not as though we are suddenly discovered Atma. You were not Atma before, now we are Atma. So he says praptasya prapti. And it is not to apraptasya prapti. Here Swami Heshanji gives a beautiful example. I really enjoyed that. This is about 6 months ago when he had seen it some other book. He said, look at this. Supposing your father helps you to buy a home. In other words, you don't own a home and you're growing up, you've become an adult son and you've got some money and your father says, okay, I'll lend you something. You don't have this house. And they look around and they find a house and then they buy it, successfully buy it. So this is what is called apraptasya prapti. Now the other example is your father had a rental property and your father died and in the will said this rental property should be given to my son. So the house already belongs to you. So this is what is called praptasya prapti. It already belongs to you. Always had. His father had the will written for 20 years. You didn't know that. You didn't know that. So now what happens is, now look at the some of the wrinkles in here. Important to see. What happens is that the will says this property is such and such in some locality in New Delhi or something that belongs to my son. So he can go and take possession. So he goes to the renters and said, please leave. I want to really live here because I'm living in a joint family and my father has passed away and then I want to live here. So they say, where are the papers? Prove it to us. In India, you think the rental program here has problems? Oh my God. The renters there are pain in the neck. What my parents had gone through is just amazing. Their whole life was spoiled because of the renters. So the renters will say, where are the papers? We don't see you are the owner. So he says, no, I'm the owner. He says, no. We don't go like this. Anybody can come in and say, I'm the owner. You have to show it. You have to prove it to us. So go find the papers. So he goes through the lawyers and lawyers said, I don't have the papers and your father must have it somewhere in the Almirah somewhere. So he spends some time, you can't find it. It takes him 2 months to empty all the boxes and finally he finds it. He finds it. Until then, those renters actually stopped paying rent. Nothing was happening. And then he finds the paper. Once he gets the paper over to them, they say, okay, then they vacate. And he can move in. So now, the finding of, so Brahma prapadyate, Param Brahma prapadyate, is like praptasya prapti. But not so fast, Buster. Not so fast. What do you mean by that? So, my waking ahankara says, oh really? Who says that you are free? It's like the renter. The renter says, prove it to me. And he says, but it says it's right here that I'm the Atma, I'm Satchidananda. He says, no, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. So, the Anvaya Vyatireka Panchakosha Viveka is like finding the papers, proving it to the waker. and then you can acquire it. So, the acquisition of the Atma, even though it is praptasya prapti, does have some hurdles. I gave you another example from my own experience, which I'll also bring in. Remember, this is a real example, that I had lost my credit card. And if the credit card was really lost, that would be apraptasya prapti. I would really go around asking all the 5 or 6 places I'd gone to, and do you have it, don't you have it, this, that, or the other. The worry there is just enormous. But once I found out that I had paid the credit card on an online transaction from my office desk, and that was one of the last things that I did, my goodness, what a relief it was. And I had not found the credit card yet. So this is another thing that we will discuss it sometime. This is what is called paroksha jnanam. Paroksha jnanam. It is jnanam, but it is not aparoksha jnanam. I don't have it in front of me. But my relief was just enormous. It's there in the house somewhere. I was not worried at all. And sure enough, I just had to move a few papers and it was right there. So the praptasya prapti is also paroksha jnanam. Until you do the work to see it. And so similarly here also, why is it paroksha jnanam? Because through the viveka, which the Vedanta allows you to do, you are convinced, my gosh, this is true. This is true. You cannot say that that it is not there. But you don't have it in your hand yet. And you will have in the hand when you really do this. I'll end with one last thing. Again, a very important thing to see. So, again, given by these acharyas like Swami Maheshananji and Swami Dayananda and others, who have had so much experience in dealing with people and so on. And so, similarly to us, very much so, which is that if this is true, how come I don't see it? Same thing, paroksha jnanam or paroksha jnanam. So there Swamiji had said that, listen, here's what happens. You look at the viveka through the eyes of the teacher for just a few minutes. You come to a class, 1.5 hours, and then perhaps you have the ability to actually do this viveka on your own. Very possible. Hopefully you do. How much time do you spend in doing this viveka? You have some samskaras, some thoughts that are left behind by doing this viveka. How much can you sustain? The other 22 hours is where your samskaras are the old samskara. I'm the body, I'm hungry, I'm living, I'm upset. So, yes, it's a very simple thing. 2 hours of the positive samskara doesn't stand a chance, of really putting up with the old samskaras. So what you need to do is to spend more of your commitment in the new samskaras, and slowly the other samskaras fall off, not without a fight. And so this is what is called Dridha samskara. So sometimes even in the Bhagavad Gita is called Vijnanam versus Jnanam. And here, to close off, it is given in this word Prapadyate, not Padyate. So prapadyate means when you are absolutely firm. Which is the real, which is the false? You have done the analysis again and again. Your commitment is also with the right identification. You are then free. This is the process that Swami Vidyaranya, with the help of the commentaries of Swami Maheshananji, has so beautifully presented. So, Anvaya Vatirekabhyam Panchakosha Vivekataha Swatmanam Tatha Udritya Param Brahma Prapadyate. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityo Ma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Correct. Yes, sir.
So this prapadyate translated as one gains is misleading.
Yeah, so these are simple things. Gains means that it's a gain of the already gained.
What about the one? There is no one.
No one meaning, sorry?
It says one gains.
So one means that the jiva, yeah, so the jiva, so the jivatma becomes paramatma. It's kind of like room space becomes space. But the reference is to the room space, because that's what the jiva is. And the jiva becomes, in the sense that it recognizes that my identity was wrong. That's all. Yeah. Yeah.
So sometimes we say the anvaya of the shloka.
So that's a different thing. So anvaya there means the order. So that's another separate another meaning of the word anvaya. Okay, so anvaya means where grammatically you rearrange it to become a text rather than a verse. Because these are poetic verses for meter's case, and so those are rearranged in the form of a textual. So that is also called anvaya. That's a different anvaya. Yeah. Yeah.
In translating koshas, where does feeling come in?
Feeling? So feeling also is a mental state. Yeah, it's anything, it's as a mind. Yeah. So my feelings are, so it's a mental state. Yeah. Manomaya kosha. Yeah. But it's good that I like this first chapter because it's a review of all the fundamentals. I think some of you have already gone beyond that in some of the other books like Mandukya and so on. But I think in terms of laying out an orderly structure, beautifully done, really nice. And then for the later chapters of Pancadasi, this is elaborated even more. Oh, beautiful. But the first one lays a very good foundation from start to finish. So when I went through that, I had the idea to present this as a advanced introduction. And I'm very happy that I took that up in that sense, because I think it is very true. So these are some fundamentals that we all should be very aware of in terms of kosha viveka, anvaya vatireka, all of these kinds of things. So it's good.
So the chapters would be going into more detail analysis of the concepts.
Well, I'm just going to follow the text here. Occasionally, then I would spend some more time on my own and so on. But I think that what this will do is to give you the foundation, and then other classes will go into the details of each one of them. Panchakosha, I think it is, if you want to listen to it in more details, then you have to listen to the classes on Taittiriya Upanishad that we finished. So you can go there, and I unfortunately don't put down by topic, so it is only by verse type, so on and so forth. But there at least you can go back to that section and look at it and study the Upanishad. Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. See you next week.